All right, so today I'm going to talk about the fact that Jesus did not exist. So there was a debate that happened in the comment section of this video here. Is there any hard evidence that Jesus actually existed? And this guy named Moonshoes said, made a comment saying, whether a person named Clark Kent ever existed is rather mundane unless you can demonstrate he was bulletproof and could fly. Um, so I agree with that. Um, people often try to separate Jesus Christ from like the supernatural claims about him. Well, here's the unfortunate news to break to you. His name was not actually Jesus. Now, there are two guys who talk about, I'll just call him Jesus for the sake of, so we have a name to pin on this fool. But his name wasn't Jesus. The earliest reference to this fool was made by this guy named Tacitus. And as you can see here on shitty ass Wikipedia, Tacitus was a senator, um, and he wrote about Jesus kind of in passing, but he did not call him Jesus. He called him Christus. Blah, 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 blah. So it's saying here, consequently, to get rid of the report, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted upon the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatius, and a most mischievous superstition. Thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful from every part of the world find their center and become popular. Accordingly, an arrest was first made of all who pleaded guilty. Then, upon their information, an immense multitude was convicted, not so much of the crime of firing the city as of hatred against mankind. So, as you can see, Tacitus, who is often cited as kind of the preeminent source for the existence of Jesus, does not even call him Jesus. He calls him Christus. Now, it's saying Christians here, but actually that's not the way he spelled it. If you scroll down a little bit here, it's actually spelled Christians. And here's what the actual text looks like. So obviously this was not in English, but if you look at the original, it does call him Christus, right? So where does this notion of Jesus even come from? Where does this idea of Jesus Christ, where does that name come from? Well, when was this written? Well, this was written, seems to be like around 64 AD, according to this. I'll just say CE, because that's the nomenclature we use, not 80 anymore. So 64 CE. Now, you got to remember, the man who wrote this was not a contemporary. So whoever he's talking about, Christus, existed over half a century ago. He died over half a century ago. All right? So he's not a contemporary. What he is doing is he's reporting on hearsay. These are accounts of accounts. That's what hearsay is. It's not an eyewitness account. This is just stuff that he heard about and he's writing about it. So the Christians, which is actually their true name, Christians, not Christians, were basically a cult. And Tacitus was not very, he did not have a high opinion of these cultist maniacs, and their cult leader was called Christus. Well, so before I said, so then where does the name Jesus Christ come from? Well, it comes from this other motherfucker. His name is Josephus. So here we have the article on Josephus on Jesus. Now, it needs to be made clear that neither of these guys, neither Tacitus nor Josephus, um, really give a damn about the guy that we today call Jesus, the artist formerly known as Jesus Christ. They're talking about like other things, okay? Other things that were more important to them. They didn't give a flying fuck about Jesus Christus, whoever the fuck he is. They did not give a single fuck. And the account that Josephus makes on Jesus is even more like cryptic and incomprehensible. So because of that, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll link it in the description so you guys can read it yourself. But it is an incomprehensible mess. But this one is a little bit more muddy because it contains Christian interpolations. What that means is that Christians, after the fact, inserted bullshit into this to make it sound like it proves that Jesus actually did exist. Okay? But it's total bullshit. So, but there is at least one portion of this crap which actually is authentic, meaning it was written by Josephus. But again, we have to take into account the dates. So it's saying here 93 to 94 CE. So that means this was written after Tacitus. Now, Tacitus called him Chrysitus or Christus. Josephus does reference someone named Jesus, but he's not actually talking about Jesus. He's talking about someone else in the authentic portion. He's talking about James. Who the fuck is James? James is apparently a brother to Jesus. What the fuck? Since when does Jesus Christ have a brother? Well, I'll tell you right now. These guys are actually talking about two different people. Okay, that's why it's so bizarre and weird. So if we scroll down to where they're talking about James, so the other shit, the other crap that's written is an interpolation. So we just dismiss it. There's no point in reading it at all because it's total nonsense. But over here, here's the shit that he writes about. He doesn't even write about Jesus. He's writing about someone named James, the brother of Jesus. And if you want to waste your time reading this nonsense, your eyes are going to glaze over because it is so boring and incomprehensible. Because he doesn't care about Jesus. He's talking about something else. But I'll just read some of the relevant shit here. Okay. Festus was now dead, and Albinus was but upon the road. So he assembled the Sanhedrin of judges and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others. And when he had formed an accusation against them as breakers of the law, he delivered them to be stoned. Okay, that is the only thing I'm going to read out of this crap, because the rest is totally boring. It is incomprehensible nonsense that has nothing to do with Jesus or Christus or anything. Okay, it just has to do with some other shit that was going on at the time that was important to this guy, but not important to us. So he's talking about someone named Jesus Christ, who, by the way, is not the Jesus Christ that everyone today is worshiping and believes is the Son of God and all this other stuff. Nor is it the same guy that Tacitus is talking about. Okay? Ironically enough, Tacitus is actually talking about the guy that people worship today. He's talking about Christus. That was his actual name, Christus, maybe. It's also possible that Christus wasn't really his name because he is reporting on hearsay, but it's at least more likely to be his real name than anything else. But what we do know is that his name was not Jesus, because this is talking about someone completely different. Okay, whoever Jesus Christ was, he had a brother named James who was stoned to death for some bullshit thing that was going on at the time. Okay, so here we have two accounts on two people who have two different fucking names, but what modern scholars can't figure out is that, yeah, they're talking about two different people. They're not talking about the same guy, but yet with the shitty ass fucking Wikipedia article says it's talking about the same guy. No, they're not. Tacitus on Jesus, Josephus on Jesus. No, they're not talking about the same person. Okay? They're talking about two completely different people. So here's the thing I'm talking about here. Now let's go back to the comment that I brought up earlier. This guy's making a point about identity. Okay? What makes a human being an identifiable human being? What makes them different from any other human being alive or throughout human history? What makes you you? What makes you identifiable as different from any other person? That's kind of tricky, isn't it? Especially if you don't know his fucking real name. And guess what? I got news for you dudes. Jesus Christ, or whoever the fuck he was not born on December 25th. This is well understood. He was not born on December 25th. Everyone who knows anything about this kind of stuff knows that that's total nonsense. That's number 2. Number 3 is Jesus was not white. He was not white. So all the depictions of him being a white guy with a mustache and a long beard is total garbage, fabricated garbage. So let's go through this one more time. You don't know his name because his name was not Jesus. You don't know his date of birth, and you don't even know what he fucking looked like. Okay, because he was not white. He was brown. He was from the fucking Middle East. All right? There's pictures of what he, modern reconstructions of what he might have looked like. He was a brown guy, okay, and his name was not Jesus. Now, can you imagine if today, remember those kids that were murdered in Idaho, those college kids that were murdered by that psychopath? Can you imagine if the cops got the suspect's name, his date of birth, and what he fucking looks like all completely wrong? What would happen? They would arrest the wrong guy. Why? Because those trivial details turn out to be incredibly important in identifying a person as someone unique and different from any other human being alive. If you get those details wrong, then who the fuck are you really talking about? Okay, so this guy here, Moonshoes, is actually talking about something about identity. When you are trying to remove all the supernatural bullshit that he was the son of God, he could walk on water, he could turn blood into wine, and all this other supernatural magic fairy tale bullshit, when you remove all that, you're not left with much left. Okay, there's not much left there, my dudes. Especially when you don't know his name, you don't know his date of birth, and you don't know what he looks like. So that was the point I was trying to make. Now, here you have a complete fucking moron called Neutrino 78X. Okay, and this guy is pretty interesting because he makes multiple fake accounts and uses the same bullshit, tired arguments over and over again using multiple fake accounts. So, what does this motherfucker say over here? So, he responds to, it's rather mundane unless you can demonstrate he was bulletproof and can fly. And he's trying to say, yes, it is mundane and separate. You can't say it is impossible for men to be bulletproof and fly, and therefore there was no such man. So he's responding to a comment made by him. The second doesn't logically follow from the first. Blah blah blah. I don't really care. So he's trying to say that, we're trying to separate the man from the supernatural bullshit. But the argument is that if you remove that component, there isn't much left of this man's identity, is there? Right? Because you don't know his name. You claim that, there was definitely a person named Jesus Christ. But who is this guy? Is this the guy that you're actually looking for? No, of course not, because we know that. We know that that's not him because the earliest reference to him doesn't even call him Jesus. It calls him Christus. Oops. So I'm not going to read all the bullshit. I'm going to read to you what I responded to him. I said, your phrasing is bad. Anyone can say anything. We have freedom of speech. What you're trying to say is that the syllogism is unsound. That aside, the earliest references to what everyone calls Jesus actually called the man Christus. So everyone is getting his name wrong. Although it's likely that Christus probably wasn't his name either. Again, going back to what I was saying before about it being reported on hearsay. The identity of the man in question is what is relevant, not his name alone. Although what his real name is matters too. So, what exactly identifies this guy? Who are you looking for exactly? How do you identify a person? So, this guy's a troll. So, he tries to pick apart all of my arguments. So, he does the whole this is like stupid bullshit that kids used to do back in the days of when people posted on forums on the internet. You remember those message board bullshit things? So, he's trying to say that was implied. No, he didn't imply anything. He basically made a very unsound syllogism. So let's go back to over here. He's trying to dismiss the point I'm making about identity. He's saying, who cares? That has no bearing on the subject. Let's stipulate his real name was Bob, and there was some translation error. Whatever. This means nothing. No, this means everything, you fucking moron. Okay? If you get something basic about him wrong, about his identity wrong, you will misidentify the person you're looking for. Okay? Remember the analogy I was talking about before. What if the cops who were looking for that serial killer got the man's name wrong? Then you might end up arresting the wrong guy, which happens all the fucking time. While a name of a person sounds like a trivial detail, and in the strictest sense, it is a trivial thing about a person's identity. However, it is not trivial to identifying them as the person that you are looking for. If you want to say that this person existed, then you need a way to identify them. And if you don't even know their fucking name, you will never be able to properly identify who you're looking for. So I call out this moron's bullshit. That's also a bad answer. You're trying to save face. When your wording is bad in the first place, don't say something was implied. Your wording was so poor, so you don't get to cop out with implications when you couldn't articulate yourself properly in the first place. I don't really care who you were replying to. Don't blame others for your mistakes. Someone who cares about logic and reason cares, which evidently is not you. I asked you questions about what about identity which you completely ignored. It seems like you like to criticize others under the guise of logic and reason, but aren't too good at receiving it. So a lot of this guy's comments were, like deleted. So I'm gonna have to jump ahead a little bit, and he basically tries to say other people need to disprove God, and I respond by saying shifting the burden of proof fallacy. No one needs to disprove God. You have to prove claims you assert in the first place. With that said, I have no problem positively asserting that God doesn't exist. It violates the first and second law of thermodynamics. It doesn't get much more impossible than that. It literally cannot exist without all of reality also being wrong. Now, I just kind of make fun of him talking about how he needs to Google what the first and second law mean, because he obviously doesn't, because he's an idiot. So here this moron tries to he does the whole picking my post apart over and over again. I'm not going to read every little stupid thing this moron writes because it'll honestly make you dumber. But I will highlight one thing because this is important later. So first, he strawmans. He strawmans not just me, but other people who are debating with him. He's saying, it's funny you guys keep thinking I'm a Christian, even though I have stated I am not. You're getting mad at the wrong guy, lol. I agree with you. To me, Jesus was just a normal man, but your logic and how you reached that conclusion is severely flawed. Now, he strawmans people because no one ever said he was a Christian. Okay, I don't really give a fuck what religion this fool is. Okay, I'm responding to his stupid arguments. But him strawmanning people is indicative of trolling. Now, guess what? It turns out that this fool. Now, let's go to his channel real quick. Now, he says he's a 41-year-old male in Silicon Valley. He claims he's a Navy submarine veteran. Pretty sure that's bullshit. But his account's pretty old. And just like most people who have old accounts, they have burner accounts. Now, look at this shit. Now, for someone who claims they're like an old military veteran, they sure have a lot of geeky, stupid shit on their channel here. A lot of Star Trek bullshit. Interesting. Interesting. Well, guess what? There is another fool who made the same exact arguments. So there's this guy named Soul Knight, and he was running around basically making the same exact remarks, trying to say that there is a difference between there is a historical non-supernatural Jesus guy. Okay. So I respond to Soul Knight here, saying, well, for starters, you're getting his name wrong. Jesus wasn't his name. So if these scholars are all calling him Jesus, then they're all getting a basic fact about his identity wrong. How are you identifying him if you don't know what his name is? His date of birth, December 25th, wasn't his birthday. His appearance, he wasn't white. So you don't know his name, his date of birth, or his physical description. What exactly are you using to identify this person as someone different from every other human being in human history? Come on, dude! All logical fallacy. We all know we are talking about the same guy. His name was blah 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 blah. I respond, I say, you failed to identify a single fallacy. No fallacy was made. No, the earliest accounts of the man you're talking about don't call him Yeshua either. They call him Christus. You can't ever say you're talking about the same guy when you fail to even delineate how you are identifying him if you don't even know his name. Appeal to authority and tradition fallacies. I do not care about a litany of texts if you don't even know what his real name is or his birthday even. You don't even know what he looks like, so how do you identify him? It's ironic that you mentioned Josephus and Tacitus. Both of those guys call him Christus, not Jesus, not Yeshua. However, it's likely that Christus wasn't his name either. So, slight correction there. Josephus does refer to him as Jesus, but Tacitus does refer to him as Christus. But like I mentioned before, they are talking about two different people. And then I accuse him over here. By the way, it's obvious that you're a sock account for Neutrino78X. You all make the same argument and strawman people by saying you aren't a Christian over and over again. Both are the same tactics Neutrino used. So this guy was doing the same thing. He was trying to go around saying that he's not a Christian. Here, it's over here. I'm not a Christian, but a spiritual person and know that Jesus existed. So no one ever called him a Christian. No one ever called him a Christian, but yet he's trying to virtue signal and say, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Christian, over and over again. And of course, this fool backtracks. He gets caught in the lie. And he says, they're obviously talking about the same person, God bless. No, they're not. How do you identify him if you're removing the spiritual, supernatural, super duper powers component from Jesus? How do you identify him? How do you identify him? What's identifiable about this person? He never delineated that. He never described how you identify him. And then he does it. He does it again. I'm not Christian. I'm Jewish by background, but follow neither religion. But I do have a relationship with Jesus who is very real. Oh, of course, he virtue signaled before about how Jesus is, he's trying to separate Jesus from the Son of God and all the supernatural bullshit. So how can he be very real, and how can you have a relationship with a person who you don't even know what his real name is, and you're trying to claim that a historical person existed separate from a supernatural Son of God thing? And I say, no, you're the same person as Neutrino. Yeah, because Neutrino did the same virtue signaling bullshit. trying to say, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Christian over and over again. And I also remark, there's no such thing as Jewish by background. Judaism is a religion, not a race. And no, calling it ethnicity is just relabeling race. That's very important to point out because there are a lot of Jews who are brainwashed into thinking that Judaism or Jewish is an ethnicity. All the word ethnicity means in this context is a relabeling of race pseudoscience. And race has been debunked as a pseudoscience for decades now. This has already done the rounds in the history of um, scientific racism. Race realism is bullshit. And of course, he gets caught after I point out that he's neutrino. And he says, "How do you know neutrino exists? Are there Roman records?" And I say, "Ha ha, looks like I caught you, neutrino." And then I point out, you don't even, he's trying to say Jesus, who is very real. You don't even know his real name, yet he is very real. You know? So, kind of funny there. Kind of funny exposing a loser who believes in fairy tales for adults that uses multiple fake accounts. Now, let's go look at Soul Knight's channel real quick. And as you can see, it has crossed lightsabers at the top here. And he made this fake account in 2018. So you remember from uh, the last account, it had Star Trek shit on it. This has some Star Wars lightsaber things on it. And the rest of the channel, conspicuously empty. Yeah, it's the same guy, the same fool. And these comments were made on the same video as well. So that's what these brainwashed Christians need to do. They need to lie about being Christian. They need to peddle race pseudoscience masquerading under the moniker of ethnicity, trying to say that Jewish is an ethnicity. Just that's a relabeling of race pseudoscience. So that's been debunked. And they say stupid shit like Jesus was very real and really did exist when they don't even know his fucking real name. And they didn't even bother to look at what Josephus and Tacitus wrote about him. And Tacitus had nothing flattering to say about this motherfucker at all. And Josephus did not give a flying fuck about the guy because he was talking about something completely different and said that he has a brother. Sorry, dudes, but the guy's name apparently is Christus, and he was just a cult leader who was seditious. He was a seditious cult leader. That's all he was. And the guy whose real name, who actually is named Jesus Christ, was someone completely different, who had a brother named James. And they didn't give a. And this other guy, Josephus, cared so little about Jesus that he didn't even write about him. And all the many, many texts that he wrote, he didn't even write about Jesus. He thought writing about his brother was more important. So that's how we know that this is total bullshit. When you can't even identify the man that you're looking for, don't even know what he looks like, and don't even know when he was born, then you know that it's complete horseshit. What we have here is someone who might have been named Christus, who was just a cult leader. And the Christians today aren't even spelling their names correctly, are getting the name of their leader wrong. They're mixing them up for the brother of James. And believe in a God when that God violates the first and second law of thermodynamics. That's how you know that it's all bullshit fairy tales for adults. See you guys later.